We are now talking to co-founder of All 22 Premium Fantasy Football, Chris Lombardi. Are you related to the Lombardi family, Chris?
I am not, but I just had to sit here and listen to the hatred for the Green Bay Packers. That was hurtful, guys. That was hurtful.
I don't hate the Green Bay Packers. I love Aaron Rodgers. I speak highly of Aaron Rodgers, even though he took $50 million in the offseason and really hurt their chances of bringing back Adams or maybe another weapon to add to that arsenal. They don't have an arsenal. Watson looks like he's turning into a pretty good player, and I like what I've seen with Love. I think Love is the future, and maybe in the offseason they have to part ways with Aaron Rodgers and move on to Jordan Love, which quite possibly could happen. But before we get into
Jets
that,
hat, right?
yes,
Is it going to be to the Jets? Do you want Aaron Rodgers?
It's so funny, and we'll get into that. Before we get into that, how are you? How are you and your family doing from the COVID situation? And really, how are you doing with football and your fantasy stuff this year?
My family's great. It's been an amazing, few years for my family. The pandemic hit hard, but actually I got married during the pandemic. So,
congratulations.
There was a lot of positivity still in there.
You look like you're 15 years old and you're married.
15. I just turned 30. So,
okay.
Just have a young face. Thank you, though.
Yeah, you look good, man. And I'm happy that your family is healthy. You got married. So any powdered feet?
No.
Okay.
But how about you guys? How's your families?
My family is good. It's crazy. It's been a crazy year. I lost a couple of very close family members. Speedy lost a grandfather in the beginning of the year, so it's been a little bit rough with everything that's going on with the COVID situation and all the not even just the pandemic. I mean the drugs and all the stuff that's going on and war and political crap. It's just been nutty, but. Happy that you're on, and to get back into the whole Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. I know a lot of people are speaking about it, that if the offseason opens up and Zach Wilson isn't the guy, or maybe they think he's a bench quarterback right now, he needs to learn under a veteran quarterback. Could they go after Aaron Rodgers? Could they go after a Carr or a Jimmy Garoppolo? Absolutely. But again, a lot of the Jet fans now here in New York like this kid, Mike White. He's 27 years old. He's in the prime of his career. If he can prove that he can get this team in the playoffs and maybe win a playoff round, do they really need to go after an Aaron Rodgers to hurt their salary cap? Do they really need to go after a Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo? They're going to be asking for $25 million. You got to pay Quinn Williams. You have to pay Quincy Williams. You have to pay Kawan Alexander. There's so many diverse things that the Jets have done over the last couple of years that has affected going into the season and their salary cap. I think Joe Douglas is a very smart man. And as good as Aaron Rodgers is as a starting quarterback, I don't see Joe Douglas digging into the Jets' pockets, even for 1 year, and paying him $50 million when you also have to give up, prospects for Aaron Rodgers. You might have to give up a first-round draft pick for Aaron Rodgers if you think you're going to win, and maybe a third. Are the Jets willing to give up their first and their third this year to land Aaron Rodgers for 1 year, which might still not give them an opportunity to win a Super Bowl? So I don't know. I don't know what Joe Douglas is thinking. Are they a year away from winning a Super Bowl? I do believe next year is their year. Elijah Vera Tucker will be back. Breece Hall will be back next year. Mekhi Beckham, if he can actually stay healthy, he'll be back next year. They have all their draft stock. They still have salary room to wiggle with. Corey Davis could be off this roster. They have good weapons like Garrett Wilson and Bam Knight and Michael Carter and an offensive line that could get younger with, obviously, Elijah Vera Tucker and Mekhi Beckham. So I don't know what he's thinking going into this offseason. I don't think they're thinking about anything this offseason because they're thinking about this season because they have a chance to make the playoffs for the first time in about 13 years.
Gotta love that. I'm actually a New Yorker too. So, I've been following the Jets. I'm a Packer fan, but I've been following the Jets. I always like to see them succeed. Mike White's been impressive, so I don't blame you, right? And he's actually scored pretty well in PFF and in the all 22 fantasy game. So I think the prospects are good with him. I could see the Jets really giving him a shot. But people, we can't forget that Aaron Rodgers is coming off of back-to-back MVPs. And, I think losing your top receiver and not having much after that, there's a reason why he's not playing at the level he was the past couple of years. I don't think he lost it. I think the pieces around him haven't been as good. He's playing with a different offensive line every game, right? Like his Bakhtiari's been out for chunks of the season. Jenkins has been moving around. Like there's been a lot of kind of vitality on that offensive line and in that receiving group. So I think you plug Aaron Rodgers into the Jets right now. If they were able to keep all the other pieces, they're a Super Bowl team. I'll stand by that.
Now, as a Packer fan, there was speculation of them trading him last year too, and we were both thinking that he was going to get traded to the Broncos at the time. I think the Raiders were in the mix too if they swapped with Carr, because Devontae Adams wanted to go play in Vegas. They could have traded both of them there. Now, this year, being that he's coming off still statistically a pretty good season considering the circumstances, but still now with the $50 million deal, do you feel like they still should try to do it considering they might get less value, or do you think they ride him out one more year and then let Jordan Love take over from there?
That's a good question. I mean, if I was in the GM seat, and again, in all 22 fantasy, that's kind of what you get to do. But if I was in that GM seat, trade Aaron Rodgers, I try to get a first round pick for him. I think they could get a little more than that, but say you get a first round pick, you got to give Jordan Love a chance before he's off that rookie contract. If you don't do that, right, and you ride with Aaron Rodgers again, and that team starts to fall apart around him, and you don't know what you have at Jordan Love, and he's in a contract year now, what do you have after that, right? You're going to have to sign Jordan Love based on nothing. I don't think the Packers do that.
No, I don't think so either. As everybody knows, we are talking and speaking to co-founder of All 22 Premium Fantasy Football, Chris Lombardi. And the thing is, this offseason is so wide open. You have all these quarterbacks who we have never seen a quarterback class of obviously franchise quarterbacks that could be available this offseason. You have Derek Carr. He is a franchise quarterback. Now, has he won anything? No, but he was an MVP candidate a couple of years ago before he hurt his leg. He made a huge amount of money over there with the Raiders. He could be on his way out, even with Adams going to where he wanted to play with his favorite player. And then obviously we mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Jimmy already said that he would love to go back to San Francisco. Is that going to happen? I don't know if San Francisco is going to be able to pay him $20 million next year. So he's probably not going back there. You have Lamar Jackson, who hasn't signed a contract. Now, they could franchise him. Just because they franchise him doesn't mean that he can't be traded. So he could be available this offseason as well. So there are tons and tons of options for the Jets. And Aaron Rodgers, we just mentioned. So there are tons and tons of options for the Jets. Now, going into the New York Jets, Zach Wilson has been getting killed from the press, from the fans, maybe because he hasn't taken any responsibility for what the Jets were offensively when he was behind the line and he was under the helm as the captain, the leader of this team. Maybe so. He is now moved up from the guy that's been sitting the bench to the second guy, the backup quarterback. Is this, and we've heard Robert Saleh say it really the last couple of weeks. We haven't seen the last of Zach Wilson. We haven't seen the last of Zach Wilson. If Mike White loses this week against the Lions or gets hurt this week, do they go back to Zach Wilson and give him an opportunity to finish out the season and then decide in the offseason that Zach Wilson isn't the guy? We trade him, we'll get a second and a fourth like we did for Sam, or we get a third and a fifth like so we can add more, draft options to maybe go after a quarterback, or hey, maybe decide to bring in a veteran quarterback. Do you think the Jets are going to, if they lose this week, going to give Zach Wilson an opportunity to come back and try to win?
No, I think your coach is doing a great job of keeping Zach Wilson's name out of the mud. I think that's what he's trying to do. I think it says a lot that he didn't dress last week. He actually wasn't the number 2 quarterback. Flacco was, right? Zach Wilson didn't dress. That says to me that they are done with Zach Wilson. If I'm a Jets fan, I would just be ready for the future being either Mike White or them going and getting a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Derek Carr ultimately stays there because they are locked in with Josh McDaniels, and I don't think they're going to just let him kind of blow it up, right? They invested in Devontae Adams. What are they going to draft a rookie quarterback to go have? It's like giving a baby the keys to a Lamborghini, right? You're not going to do that, right? So they're going to keep Carr, but Jimmy Garoppolo could be the guy. And the fact is that Jimmy Garoppolo has won a lot of games, right? He's won a lot of playoff games. He's made it to a Super Bowl. There's not a lot of other quarterbacks that can say that. And Derek Carr is even one of those quarterbacks that can't say that. So is that the worst thing for the Jets? I don't think so. but is he a good enough player to get you excited about? No, I understand that.
I feel bad for Derek Carr. The year he got hurt, I thought the Raiders had the best chance in the AFC of knocking off the Patriots that year. That team was loaded, and then they dismantled it 2 years later, and then got John Gruden, and the rest is history. But if they keep going with Josh McDaniels, have fun blowing all those double-digit leads, because they have already blown 4 of them this year, first time since 1930.
Yeah, and it's sad because Derek Carr is such a promising quarterback. It must be the Carr name, right? These promising quarterbacks enter the league and get stuck in these terrible situations, and they just can't seem to get out of it.
Oh, I remember David, and I remember when the Texans drafted him, and everybody said he was the next coming quarterback, and maybe they just didn't build the team right. And we've seen this before. We've seen so many different quarterbacks come into the league. They're the next big superstar, and they just never built the team around him right. And he was getting killed and concussions and just could never stay healthy. And then he eventually became the backup quarterback for Eli Manning. And he was a pretty good backup, but we will never know what David Carr could have been because the Texans didn't really put the right players around him to be successful. Maybe people are saying that about the Jets. They're not putting the right offensive line in front of them. They're not putting the right weapons. I'm sorry to say that. We've seen what Garrett Wilson is. Garrett Wilson's going to be he is going to be a top 5 wide receiver in the next 3 years. Breece Hall could be a top 3 running back in the next couple of years. They have Elijah Moore. Even though he needs to shut his mouth and stop saying stupid things on and off the field, the guy can make plays. And Denzel Mims is finally becoming the player they thought he was going to be when they drafted him from Baylor in the second round. And Joe Douglas looks pretty good now with Denzel Mims as maybe the guy that's going to take over for Corey Davis. So, I mean, the Jets are in a position where they can be successful. The question is, do they have the right pieces with the right quarterback to eventually be a Super Bowl contender? Because we have never, even with Rex Ryan, when they went to back-to-back AFC title games, Chris, we have never heard that the Jets was an elite team or a Super Bowl contending team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think right now you can honestly say that the Jets have an elite defense. You know, and it's been a while since you can say that. The Jets have been drafting these defensive players. Every year, me and the co-founders of All 22, we say it. We're like, wow, the Jets killed it this draft. They got the best players. Can't believe guys like Leonard Williams fell to them, right? It's like year after year we're saying these things, but they just haven't panned out. But now, finally, they have this elite defense. I think it is a Super Bowl defense. The offensive line is good enough, right? And the guys at PFF preach this all the time. You don't need an elite offensive line. You need an offensive line that's stable and at least league average, and you need elite weapons. And Garrett Wilson is an elite weapon. He looks like he's, I don't want to say this, but he's Justin Jefferson-esque, right? He's a great route runner. He makes big plays. He's always getting open, and he's fast. So, you have the pieces. You need a quarterback. You need a quarterback that can lead you to wins week after week. I think Mike White is doing a great job. I don't think he's a Super Bowl quarterback. I think that's going to be the Jets offseason.
So I want to go to from a fantasy standpoint now. We look at all the quarterback injuries that have happened the last couple of weeks with Kyler Murray this week and then Lamar Jackson, Jimmy G. Obviously, Brock Purdy stepped in and did very well. But again, what do you think for those teams' offensive skill players? Should you be worried about any of them with the Ravens, the Cardinals, the 49ers, et cetera?
Yeah, so I think All 22 does a really good job of separating individual player performance, right? So PFF grades a player on a 0 to 100 scale, and All 22 uses that PFF grade as the mechanism for their scoring, right? So if Garrett Wilson goes out there and runs excellent routes every single route and he's open every single route, he's going to get a really good grade. It does not matter if he gets the ball. Him getting the ball only can make that better for him, right? Him making plays with the ball in his hand only helps. But Garrett Wilson can still have a great All 22 score just by doing what he needs to do to be successful. And that even includes blocking.